After 4 weeks of testimony in the James Whitey Bulger trial, a smoking gun today, ex-mobster and one-time Bulger sidekick Kevin Weeks testified that it was Whitey Bulger himself who fatally shot Brian Halloran, the first eyewitness account of Bulger perpetrating a murder. Adam Riley has more on today's dramatic testimony.
Kevin Weeks sounded nervous when he started testifying against his old boss, Whitey Bulger, today. Basically, we just drove around, Weeks told the court. Sometimes I'd beat somebody up. But soon, Weeks grew more talkative. He discussed the 1982 murders of Brian Halloran and Michael Donahue in gruesome detail, recounting how Halloran got out of his car after he was first shot, and Bulger kept shooting until his body was bouncing around. Weeks also talked about making hundreds of thousands of dollars through shakedowns and about stashing illegal guns at Bulger's request. But he denied forcing Stephen Rakes to sell the South Boston Liquor Mart to Bulger, a denial that left Rakes livid.
Well, Kevin continues to lie as usual. That's what he has to do, because if he doesn't, then he'll be in bigger trouble.
Kevin Weeks takes the stand again tomorrow.
And Adam Riley is here. Well, Adam, you were tweeting this morning. You were saying that the trial was plodding. It was kind of slow. Yep. Weeks seemed reluctant to talk, but then things took a dramatic turn.
Yeah, I totally, well, I shouldn't say I totally misread the morning, because it was a slow start. We heard, he didn't seem to want to talk about his criminal career. We heard about these long walks that he would go for with Bulger and Flemmy. And, that matters. They wanted to avoid detection, and also Jim liked the exercise, we learned. He calls Whitey Bulger Jim, never Whitey. But yeah, then after the morning break, things got intensely interesting very quickly. The big, interesting development of the day was hearing this firsthand account of the murders of Michael Donahue and Brian Halloran in 1982. I think you and I were talking about this earlier. We've heard a lot of talk about these murders throughout this trial, but this is the kind of the most intimate description that we've received yet, a real you-are-there account. He was in the car with Bulger and this mysterious guy who was in the back of the car. I think it was actually a tow truck.
That's the car, which they actually went to see afterwards.
That is a totally chilling detail. That's right. That's the car in which Brian Halloran, who was an FBI informant who Winter Hill wanted to hit, was killed. He was a passenger. The driver was Michael Donahue, who just happened to be giving Halloran a ride home, doing a nice, doing a favor for him, and paid this huge price. And obviously, Donahue's family has been a continual presence in court. But yeah, he went to see the car, a day or two after the shooting. They went to a tow lot in South Boston, Flemmy, Weeks, and Bulger, and they just sort of looked at Bulger's handiwork, and he was really proud. Yeah.
Brian Halloran knew that Whitey Bulger had killed Roger Wheeler, the Highlight executive, and he was afraid that he was going to go to the FBI.
That's right.
To cut himself a deal. And
That's
meanwhile,
right.
Whitey Bulger already had a deal.
Yeah, and Bulger learned about this possible threat via his excellent FBI connections and decided to come. And we heard about how the hit went down. Bulger was wearing a floppy mustache, which actually made him look like another gangster, Jimmy Flynn. That's right, who was going to take the hit for a while for the crime. And Kevin Weeks, when he reported that that Brian Halloran was in a position to be shot, I think he said it was something like the balloon has lifted off.
They used to call him the balloon.
Because they called him the balloon head because he had a big head. Yeah.
So he said the balloon has risen.
The balloon has risen. That's good.
And meanwhile, when Halloran fell out of the car, apparently he was
alive.
He was alive, and cops came up to him and he said this guy Flynn had shot him because
of the floppy mustache. And not only was he alive when he got out of the car, but today Weeks talked about Halloran being alive when he exited the car and being shot repeatedly until, as he put it, his body was jumping. So you imagine this body on the ground just being riddled with bullets. And not only did they go look at the car a couple days later for about 5 minutes, and then they left because they thought it might be unsafe. But they went back to Flemmy's mother's house that evening. And it's sort of weird. They were always hanging out at Flemmy's mom's. I'm not really sure why, but
probably good pasta.
Good pasta. I suppose that would do it. So they went back to Flemmy's mother's house. Weeks said he was watching TV, looking to see if there was any reporting about the hit. Flemmy and Bulger were sitting at the table. Bulger was kind of luxuriating in the details of what he'd done, telling it as a war story. And Flemmy was upset because he hadn't been able to participate in it. That's
All right, so I'm interested in this whole Stephen Rakes thing, because this is something that we delved into extensively when we were doing some reporting on this. The story goes that when Bulger and Weeks wanted to take over Stippo's, the liquor store that Stephen Rakes owned, they went to his home. Stephen Rakes, Julie, his wife, was at the store. He goes to the home and basically threatens them. And he has a gun on the table, and the little girl puts it in her mouth and starts teething on it. And then he eventually hands him $67,000 and says the store is ours. But Riggs is saying, Weeks is saying, oh, that never happened.
In Weeks's telling of the story, they were in fact sitting at Rakes' home, but as he describes it, Rakes wanted to sell the store. He says Rakes came to them offering to sell the South Boston Liquor Mart for about $100,000. And then in Weeks's telling, then Rakes tried to shake down the Winter Hill gang, trying to bargain the price down. Now, we talked a lot about shakedowns today. When the Winter Hill gang would shake down people, they would, put a gun up against their head or up against their stomach and force them to pay tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Weeks is, or in rent or protection. Somehow, Weeks is able to say that Rakes wanted to sell the store to them and tried to shake down Winter Hill by pushing to sell for more money than they'd initially offered, which is a very warped way of thinking about what a shakedown is. But he says not only did Rakes come to them to try to unload the store and then push for more money than they'd initially offered, but that the incident with the girl, this little girl putting a gun in her mouth, never happened at all, that there was a gun on the table. The little girl, Rakes' daughter, reached for it, and that Bulger pushed it to the other side, saying, oh, put that away.
So I'm curious about what the interaction, eye contact, or anything like that was between Whitey Bulger and Kevin Weeks today. Did Kevin look at him? Did he look back?
Well, this is actually a rare day when I was in the media room as opposed to the courtroom. Philip Martin from GBH was in the courtroom today. From the reports I've read, there wasn't a lot of eye contact. No one has really wanted to look at Bulger when they're on the stand. There's a lot of sort of looking up at the artwork around the ceiling of the courtroom. And my understanding is that Weeks did much the same thing today.
Oh, so he didn't stare him down?
He did not stare him down.
And do you know whether Bulger was looking at him? According to tweets, he was not.
Bulger, throughout the trial, it's sort of tough if you're in the courtroom because you're looking at the back left. If you're in the media section, you're looking at the back left of Bulger's head. So you can catch him shooting what looks like a glimpse at the witnesses, but you can't really say for sure whether eye contact is being made. There are actually times in the media room where we're getting a videotape where the images are a little better and a little clearer, but today was not one of those.
Yeah. So Weeks is going to be on the stand another day or so?
Yeah, well, the prosecution hasn't even finished with him, so he will be continuing his testimony tomorrow, and then the defense will have its chance to cross him. And the defense has been really good. Their strategy throughout this is basically highlighting for the jury the fact that the guys who are central to the case against Bulger are really bad people who did really bad things and served little or no time in jail as a result. Now, we should mention, Weeks spent 5 years in prison after agreeing to cooperate with the government and copying everything from money laundering to extortion to participating in 5 murders. So usually with those sort of crimes acknowledged, you should spend more than 5 years in prison. Yeah. So the defense is going to hammer him just like they hammered John Martirano and others. They'll stress that he's cooperating and has an incentive to say what the government wants him to say, to stay out of jail. It should be pretty fascinating to watch.
All right, Adam Riley, as always, thanks for that update.
Thanks, Emily.
All right, we'll turn to WGBHnews.org for continuing coverage of the Bulger trial. We'll also have an interactive guide to all the players in the trial, from the Bulger family to former Governor Bill Weld. That's at WGBHnews.org.